The Phoenix Force is one of the most powerful entities inside the Marvel Universe, but who has been strong enough, worthy enough, or desperate enough to wield its power? What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is a weekly one-shot where I'm going to be talking about the Phoenix Force. Make sure you subscribe to get more of these every single week. The first thing that I want to talk about is how many different hosts that the Phoenix has had, but first we have to establish what the Phoenix is. So the Phoenix is a cosmic entity on the grandest of scales. It is an Omega-level, extinction-level event that has been proclaimed as the end of the universe by so many people over the history of Marvel Comics. What we find is that it is the central nexus point of all psionic energy inside the Marvel Universe. It is the embodiment of cosmic life and rebirth. So, when you're talking about the Phoenix, you're talking about the control over the life and rebirth of everything inside the universe, as well as the control of all psionic energy inside the entirety of the Marvel Universe. It's quite a responsibility to handle. However, there are a number of people inside the Marvel Universe that have taken up this mantle and done their best to deal with the burden. The first and most obvious of the hosts of the Phoenix Force has to be Jean Grey. So when it made its debut in X-Men number 101, Jean Grey was the person that called out to it and asked to be saved as she was piloting a spaceship through space trying to save the rest of the X-Men. So while there was a lot of retconning that really kind of changed the personality of Jean Grey and how this really reacted, it's one of those situations where I'm just going to kind of focus on the fact that Jean Grey is the first and original host of the Phoenix inside the Marvel Universe. And this is kind of carry on through the Phoenix Saga, the Dark Phoenix Saga, and through the rest of the history as far as Marvel continuity is concerned. Jean Grey and the Phoenix Force are intrinsically linked to the point where it's called, her best avatar, a missing piece of the Phoenix Force itself. So Jean Grey has played an especially important role inside the history of the Phoenix and can't be denied that. Next, let's talk about Madelyne Pryor. So at the end of the Dark Phoenix Saga, a portion of Jean Grey's soul, as well as the essence of the Phoenix Force, was fed into Madelyne Pryor's body as it was trying to seek out the body of Jean Grey. And this was basically a clone, a perfect genetic clone of Jean Grey inside Mr. Sinister's lab. And this really brought about the resurrection of Jean Grey, the relationship that Scott Summers had, and the creation of Cable and Nathaniel Summers that has really kind of helped perpetuate that character throughout the Marvel Universe. So Madelyne Pryor eventually went insane, called herself the Goblin Queen, and really kind of raised hell all over Earth. After that, let's talk about Rachel Summers. Rachel Summers is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers' Cyclops in an alternate timeline. So essentially, she bounced back in time. The Phoenix, while she was meditating, bonded itself to her and sent a portion of the Phoenix to interact with Rachel Summers. So while the daughter of Kitty Pryde was kind of tending to her as she was in this kind of comatose state, the Phoenix Force invited itself into the body of Rachel, and she had limited control and power over the Phoenix Force, this small portion of the Phoenix Force. It wasn't quite a lot, but it was definitely enough to consider her a host of the Phoenix. Then we'll talk about Emma Frost, the White Queen. So when she was running the Hellfire Club, her and the Phoenix were antagonists, but ultimately the Phoenix found its way to Emma Frost multiple times over the history of Marvel continuity. So in Phoenix Endsong, she took possession of the Phoenix for a short period of time in an effort to save everything because she was currently in a relationship with Scott Summers, Cyclops, and there was a lot that she was really trying to save inside the world. Of course, this didn't last very long. Jean Grey eventually resurrected herself, becoming the White Phoenix, and then banishing the Phoenix, essentially fracturing everything and no longer possessing the Phoenix Force itself. Then at the end of Endsong, we actually start up War Song, where we see the next hosts of the Phoenix, and that is the Stepford Cuckoos. So as the Phoenix Force is fractured into billions of fragments across all of space-time, what we see is that 3 of them find their way into the Stepford Cuckoos, essentially influencing all their individual actions and really causing a lot of confusion and terror amongst the members of the X-Men. Of course, this saga did end, but it gets into another group of hosts that we got, and that was in Avengers vs. X-Men, and we get the Phoenix Five. So at that point in time, Hope Summers, who was brought back from the future by Cable, is basically destined to be the next host of the Phoenix. However, in an effort to kind of thwart these things, the Phoenix Force is fractured and takes up residence inside 5 members of the X-Men. You have Namor, Cyclops, Emma Frost, Colossus, and Magic, all possessing a portion of the Phoenix Force and all doing a variety of different things, trying to rectify and repair the world that was going to be obliterated. Over time, the corruption of the Phoenix Force, the loss of these pieces of the Phoenix Force, help overwhelm Emma Frost, eventually turning Cyclops into the Dark Phoenix and really forcing the next host to take over the possession of the Phoenix and ultimately destroy it, at least at that point in time. And this would be Hope Summers, the first child born after M-Day. So when you're talking about Hope, she's basically an Omega level mutant on her own, but with her access to the Phoenix Force, she is nigh omnipotent, just like the Phoenix Force itself. So while she's had a very limited role, not necessarily taking a lot of possession of the Phoenix Force at this point in time, she has produced the Firebird a few times, which has kind of alluded to the fact that she could be a potential host for the Phoenix Force inside the future. But we're not quite finished with Cyclops. In the events of Time Runs Out, as well as Secret Wars, what he does is he finds a Phoenix egg and he holds onto it in the efforts to prevent an incursion from destroying Earth 616. So even though it doesn't necessarily happen until the end of Time Runs Out, just before Secret Wars, he eventually cracks open the Phoenix egg, takes possession of the Phoenix Force, and starts to use it to its full potential. However, it's not quite enough. When we're in the events of Secret Wars, he goes to confront God King Doom, who is ruling over Battleworld, and he doesn't have nearly enough power even with the Phoenix Force, as God King Doom just snaps his neck, wiping him out. However, Cyclops is reborn as Reed Richards rectifies and replaces the universe. That gets us into the new version, Marvel Now 2.0. We're talking about Marvel Legacy, and then you're going to get a few different carriers that have taken possession of the Phoenix but don't currently hold on to it. The first of which is Thane, son of Thanos. So after the Infinity Saga, he basically took off into the universe, and in Jeff Lemire's run on Thanos, he gained the power of the Phoenix Force by stealing a Phoenix egg from Terrax. So the power was stripped from him before his final confrontation with his father, so he's no longer in possession of the Phoenix Force. Also, the Phoenix Force made an appearance inside Mighty Thor, where a portion of it was taken control of by Quentin Quire. Quentin Quire, also a member of the Ensong saga that was going on, he has felt that the destiny of himself was to take over control of the Phoenix Force, but this just wasn't the right time. Though he was declared a god, possessing this Phoenix Force above the Shi'ar, he later appears back on the standard Earth 616 without the power, so we're not necessarily sure exactly what happened. The last one that I want to talk about is from Marvel Legacy number 1, and this is an anonymous host from Avengers 1 million BC. Though it does carry a striking resemblance to Jean Grey, it's possible that there's another person, another humanoid, that was taken over as a host of the Phoenix in order to kind of influence the rest of the universe. But we don't necessarily have a lot of information on that, so it's one of those things where it's kind of a bonus. But those are the hosts of the Phoenix that I could find. I want to know if you guys know of any other ones, so hit me up in the comments down below, and we can have that conversation and start talking about what kind of craziness happens when the Phoenix is around. As always, if you like what you see, hit your like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.